Welcome to the Lance Wallnau Show, all of you amazing wonders, the great awakening army of God out there in the United States, and I'm told around the world. Thank you for putting us on the track to almost 12 million downloads. And I run into you all over the place, and it's always great to see in airports, conferences, conventions, and unlikely places. Ran into a pilot recently who came out and talked to me right there at the airport. And he ran into me in the hallway, and then I found out I was on his flight. So it's always great to see you. Frank Gaffney is our special guest today. He is a policy wonk, a security analyst. I hear him often on War Room with Steve Bannon. Has a best-selling book out there. I want to talk to him about my theories and his on what's actually going on, because these conspiracy theories are actually proven to be very accurate. But one thing I'm surprised of is how many of you have heard me talk about various things, from gold to food supply, and ironically, how few people actually take me serious on it. Now, look, what I'm suggesting to you is what I do. I look at the food supply. I look at the water supply. I look at the energy, and I say, you've got to be able to have at least a 2-week window, a bare minimum of 2 weeks survival. So I'm always surprised at why people don't take action on this. We have a 2-week emergency food supply. I'm looking at it right now. LanceWallnau.com/Patriot. A 2-week supply. Just listen. 2,000 calories a day, 114 servings, the 10 different food varieties. You can say goodbye to food boredom. They're wrapped in like 4 layers of preservation, material in their pouches with a 25-year shelf life. I mean, at least have a 2-week supply for you. And if your kids show up, it's down to 1 week. But it's only $127. Get started there. People say, I can't afford like the $500. Get the $500 when you got 30 days worth. No matter what happens, you're okay. Just figure out how to heat your house. But look, get the 2-week supply, $127. It includes breakfast, lunch, and dinners, 114 servings, 2,000 calories a day, and it actually tastes good. Only in America. LanceWallnau.com/Patriot. Just take a look at it. You'll be glad you did. And then let's go into the distress of what's happening in the world and the silver lining that is China's own internal problems. Welcome to the program. And I try to bring to you the very best and sharpest commentary that I can find. I believe that current events have to be seen through a certain kind of a lens so that you have what I would consider a biblical worldview and a prophetic perspective, meaning where is this going? And to that end, we have our special guest today, Frank J. Gaffney, founder and executive chairman of the Center for Security Policy, which he's also the author of the Amazon National and International #1 bestseller on the Indictment, Prosecuting the Chinese Communist Party and Friends for Crimes Against America, China, and the World. So I've heard him, of course, in various places. Frank, good to have you with us, and I've seen you on Steve Bannon's War Room, and I think we're doing a show right before him on Saturday morning, so I like to track with what Steve's up to all the time. Interesting enough, you acted as Ronald Reagan's Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy back when the Soviet Union was the big subject. Let me just bounce around on a couple of different subjects, because I think you can handle all of them, and this is unrehearsed. So what do you agree with the vilification of Putin and Russia and the celebration of Zelensky and Ukraine as the model of democracy under threat? How do you see that? How do you frame what's going on with Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I have a sort of mixed view of all of this, I have to say. I think Vladimir Putin is a rapacious, murderous thug whose ambitions, I think, are far beyond Ukraine. He seeks, I believe, to reestablish at least the Russian empire, if not the Soviet one. And I think what he's launched in Ukraine to devastating effect there is evidence of what he would just as soon do elsewhere if he could. So I'm of the view that the Ukrainians, certainly the people of Ukraine, are clearly the victims of unprovoked and actually deplorable aggression by Vladimir Putin. Having said that, Lance, the mix comes in. I believe that we have reached a point where we simply can no longer engage in the kind of diversion of our own military equipment, let alone that we need to be applying to try to deter further aggression in places like Taiwan, for example, as we have been doing now for the better part of a year and a half, with Joe Biden's supplying virtually everything that he can to the people or the government of Zelensky. And that's a mixed bag, Zelensky's government. Let's be clear. I think, again, for the reasons I've mentioned, he is on the side of the good guys, as I see it, but he's not such a good guy himself. And questions abound about where has all the money gone, where have all those weapons gone. Are the Ukrainians now so beset with corruption that they're not actually benefiting from the help that the American people are sending them? And frankly, has all of that help been actually transmitted to them? That's another question that I think is complicating enormously an assessment of where we are and where we're likely to go.
Okay, so you subscribe more to the Mark Levin and Sean Hannity kind of narrative on Russia, Putin's being bad, and Zelensky's kind of a victim, and Ukraine's a victim. So it's so important to get these different perspectives out there. I'm kind of the opinion that Zelensky is not quite the choir boy either that we thought he was. That there's strong Soros connections into Ukraine, tremendous corruption in the third most corrupt nation, I think, I was looking at, in terms of handling money and money going in there without having the accountability. Who knows where in the world that's going? And I'm not so sure that the meat grinder that is the Russian front in Ukraine is actually something which the Ukrainians are passionate about continuing with. They really should. They should end that, don't you think? They should end it before we have an incident. And just out of curiosity, doesn't it bother you that they've got that one independent hired army that they have? What's it called? The Wagner Group. So the Wagner Group evidently is popping up in Belarus. It's over there, operating there. And then I'm hearing that it's got some kind of showing up there near Poland. Don't you think that that some rogue unit like that could possibly trigger this? And then you got Lindsey Graham talking like, hey, if they, these are the red lines for nuclear confrontation, as though nuclear is something as an option. I mean, does that stuff not concern you as a policy guy?
Yeah, all of it does. Look, corruption is now endemic. I'm sorry to say, I think there's a fair amount of it on our own government. But Zelensky, is he worse than Putin on the corruption scale? Well, probably not. But is he more corrupt than you'd like, and a guy that you're trying to help survive this onslaught? For sure. And as I said, Lance, if what's happening is the diversion of armaments that we're supplying into, criminal gangs, or worse, even the Russians themselves, for profit by somebody, that's obviously unacceptable. Can we, credibly insist that they have to have a ceasefire? Well, again, that will partly depend on whether that's really the practical effect of telling them you just can't send more weapons, you can't send more money. But I think it's right. I'm not sure about it, but I think it's right that the Ukrainian people are still of the view that they must fight on, and that they will not welcome this idea that we might impose, for example, a ceasefire. But I do think that where you're headed with this is there a chance of this continuing to ratchet up and expand? I think there is. But going back to my mixed emotions about it, I do think that if there is a ceasefire under circumstances in which Putin is not actually defeated, you are likely to see him taking advantage of whatever pause he might have to rebuild and then go back for the second bite out of Ukraine and maybe, as I say, places beyond.
Interesting. Well, I want to move on to a subject which is really your forte, which is the China threat. Do you, when you write the book, The Indictment, Prosecuting the Chinese Communist Party, what would you say is the greatest aha people are going to get when they read a book like this, if they're kind of coming into this conversation not knowing the Communist Party of China and what it's really like?
I hope it is that, not because we want this, but because the Chinese Communist Party does. The takeaway will be that we are at war with the Chinese Communist Party, that it is engaged in a form of warfare that's been underway for actually decades and has done incalculable harm to our country, though most of us aren't actually clued up that that's been going on at all, let alone how severe the consequences have been, which sets the stage for a series of 20 recommendations about what we need to now be doing to counter this threat, which, by the way, Lance, I hope another takeaway is that they will also appreciate that having engaged in this so-called pre-kinetic kind of warfare for 30 years, maybe, the Chinese are now, it seems, poised to go to the old-fashioned kind, the shooting kind of war. And just how urgent it is that we do everything we can to deter that and if necessary, defeat it.
I was in Taiwan with Sam Brownback, who was the ambassador for, religious liberty or whatever that category.
International
Religious Liberty, right. And I can remember when I was in Taiwan, President Xi had made an announcement that the annexing of Taiwan back to mainland China was a non-negotiable, hopefully to be done voluntarily, but willing to do it by other means. I mean, a clear and unveiled statement that there would be military. This is what the message was to Taiwan. Military is our option, but it's non-negotiable. You're going to be reunited with the homeland. And you're saying that China's giving every indication of ramping itself up to the point where it can have the military option of doing so. Am I reading you right, sir?
I think there's no doubt that the Chinese Communist Party has embraced Xi Jinping's vision that on his watch, China will reacquire or acquire, depending on who you talk to, Taiwan. That it will be by force if necessary and by other means if possible. And that the capabilities to use force for that purpose, including against us, are now being put into place and exercised and demonstrated in the hope, I think, probably of persuading the Taiwanese to surrender without a fight, but if necessary, to conquer the island and prevent us from coming to its rescue and perhaps take us out more generally. It depends on, how far they decide to go. But all of that now seems in prospect. And you're absolutely right, Lance, to point to the rhetoric of the dictator of China, the emperor, if you will. He's made it absolutely clear to his people that they must prepare for war. They must accept further hardship and sacrifice because that will be required. They must rally around the flag. Now, some of that, as you know, as a student of history, is what totalitarians do when they're in trouble. And I think, China is probably the single biggest beneficiary of the war with Ukraine. They are having problems on the home front. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I want to talk
to you. I think the Chinese Communist Party is feeling threatened to the point where this option may be required.
So, Frank, you're saying that all is not rosy in China. Who is it I listen to every now and then? Gordon? Was it Gordon Chang?
Chang.
Yeah. So every now and then I hear him. And for years I've been holding on to hope that, the Chinese economy is, so fragile. The real estate market is collapsing. And they live under such a cloud. It's amazing that 1 billion people, with all the surveillance and the trillions of dollars of money we have, that we're always fumbling around guessing what's going on over there in China. So they do have some problems. I mean, so do you, to your point, you're saying a lot of times what totalitarian entities do is they get everybody all ginned up about some conflict to get them unified and distracted from other problems. But where are the fault lines in China? If you had to say that God himself has designed the world in such a way that he puts checks and balances in place so things don't take on momentum faster than providence allows, where's the challenges inside of China right now that we need to know about?
Well, there are economic ones. You mentioned two of them. There's a real estate bubble that has burst. There's a banking crisis. There is, I think, ferment as a result of the hardships that were imposed by Xi Jinping's so-called zero COVID, policies, the lockdowns, the restrictions on movement, and all kinds of other oppression. But perhaps the single most serious fault line is the demographic one. And the first charge in our book, The Indictment, by the way, is about the crimes against humanity of the Chinese Communist Party, Lance. And by some estimates, they've killed 100 million people.
What?
Predominantly their own. Some of them Tibetans, some of them are Uyghurs, some of them are Southern Mongolian, some now are Hong Kong, but mostly it's Han Chinese. But that doesn't count. Get this, that doesn't count the 400 million the Chinese Communist Party has boasted of murdering in the womb, mostly baby girls. That demographic crisis that they now confront with far too many old people, far too many short of what they need to support them among younger generations, but most especially because of the one-child policy and the sex selection for abortions, voluntary abortions, a lot of forced abortions, but the voluntary abortions that they wanted male babies, they did not want female babies. There are now, according to Gordon Chang, among others, something on the order of 40 million marrying age young men for whom there are no women. And that is a crisis, a sociological crisis that I think, again, feeds into the idea, well, get those guys out of here. They can be cannon fodder. They can be getting women someplace else. They can be seizing territory and resources and all the rest of it for the motherland. But you got to take them out of the mix of becoming an instrument for, well, bringing down the Chinese Communist Party, which I think otherwise they could well be.
Well, that's a powerful piece of information. So when you mess with the social engineering and you decide to eliminate the women and abort them, there's some consequences to that, such as nobody thought about this. All right, we're going to be back in a minute more with Frank Gaffney. Always interesting. I want you guys to get some of these conversations because you're not hearing them. I know that. That's why I want to get them to you here on the Lance Wallnau Show. We'll be right back.
Over the last 20 years, with all your support, we've been able to not only launch the original MyPillow, but also the MyPillow mattress topper, Giza Dream bed sheets, My Slippers, and the MyPillow bath towels. But there's so much more. In fact, we have over 200 products, and I'm so confident that you'll love each and every one of them that when you go to MyPillow.com now, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20 just for checking out the website. No purchase necessary. Get everything from MyPillow blankets, sleepwear, kitchen towels, mattresses, duvets, pet beds, body pillows, comforters, couch pillows, bathrobes, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And remember, just for checking out MyPillow.com, you'll immediately receive a free gift valued at $20. No purchase necessary. This is a limited time promotion, so go to MyPillow.com now.
Go to MyPillow.com and use promo code Lance to save big on all of Mike's best products. That's promo code Lance.
Welcome back to the Lance Wallnau Show here, and we're going to be on Real America's Voice. And Frank, you have a program on Real America's Voice also, Securing America. People could catch that there. I want to make sure they know about your book, The Indictment. I guess they can get the indictmentbook.com. Is that where they go?
That's one place. Books are sold lots of other places, of course, and Amazon also carries it, as does Barnes & Noble. So it's widely available.
It's all over the place.
I encourage them to check it out if they can.
And I see Bannon did the forward. Well, I got to get Bannon to do a forward for me. He's doing it for Alex Jones. He's doing it for you. My gosh, Steve, I need to get a forward by Steve Bannon.
Well, he actually did me the further honor of making this the first of his War Room Books imprint. So I got a twofer out of him.
It's a War Room book publication, you say?
He has a War Room Books imprint now, and this was the first of that book series.
Well, who knew? I didn't know. That's live on the air. I just found that out. Okay, now back to the Communist Party. They got some trouble in River City here. So they have the we don't know how the yuan is really doing because they operate without any of the physics of actual mechanisms that control the currency. Are you concerned about the BRICS in light of the incompetence and the lunacy of how Democrats and Washingtonians spend money? Do you think BRICS is going to be a problem? That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia, and all the other 10 countries who want to pile in.
Africa,
Do you think this is going to be a challenge?
I do think it's going to be a problem because it's intended to be a problem. Their object explicitly, as part of this larger strategy of taking down the United States, is to displace the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. And what exactly they're going to use for that is unclear. It's unlikely, for the reasons you mentioned, to be the yuan by itself, but there may be, as they call it, a basket of currencies, and they may say that there is some gold backing to it or other commodities that give people more confidence in it than you would otherwise have. But I think, frankly, the main thing is, thanks, as you very properly pointed out, to our own profligacy, the willingness to just print more money, to continue to binge spend, we have done an awful lot to undermine the value of the dollar all by ourselves. They're simply now going to try to suggest that they've got another mousetrap that's better. And unfortunately, I think that it probably will prove to be not a very good currency and may not contribute to, a new, more stable international monetary system. But I do think that they're going for the dollar big time. Yes, sir.
Well, and so help me understand in this complex multi-layered game of chess, how does our European, I almost feel like I'm dealing with, who do you root for? Mao, Stalin, or Hitler? All three of them are bad. But so I look at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and we focus a lot of attention on the transnational corporations, Davos and World Economic Forum. Certainly the corporations are going to be impacted by this. They're transnational. But where do you think, what is the interest of Davos and WEC as they look at BRICS? How are they affected by this?
I think they figure they're going to benefit from it because they're hedging their bets, and the coming thing is going to be not just the named BRICS nations, but there's some 40 others that are now applying to be inside that particular tent. The Davos guys, it's very interesting. I didn't actually know this until fairly recently myself, Lance. I'm sure you do, but they're famous for their annual meetings in Davos, Switzerland in February. But it turns out that for years, they've also met annually in China. And that's partly a product of, and partly a reflection, I guess you might say as well, of their admiration for the Chinese communist system.
This portion is too hot to handle for social media. Go to lancewallnau.com/podcast to listen to the entire show.
We love all of you. We look forward to hearing from you. And you can contact me at freedom@lancewallnau.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless you.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.
Hey, let's take a moment right here and talk about something. You know, these programs are actually paid for by sponsors. And so the one thing that I always do is try to pick the sponsors that have the greatest value. Those are the ones that I myself believe in. Now, the Birch Gold Group is one of those key sponsors, and I'll tell you why. The economy is the area that I'm the most concerned about in terms of instability in the future. Do you know that right now, China and Russia and India is meeting with Saudi Arabians and South Africans to create an alternative economy, to basically crush the dollar. This is going to have a massive effect on the stock market, on real estate. It'll be a real shaking. But you don't have to be shaken, because there's a way you can protect your retirement, your 401ks, your IRAs, by connecting them in with gold. Gold is unique in history in that it's a place of stored value. In fact, those BRICS nations of Brazil and Russia, India and China, they're going to be backing themselves with, guess what? Gold. So be smart. I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/birch and get a free information kit. Get knowledge, act quickly, don't wait. And they're going to be able to help you make a great decision on what to do. Remember, that information is free with no strings attached. Do it now, lancewallnau.com/birch.